There is something about you that is really special, really unique. And when you find that space inside of yourself, you find your life's purpose. When you're on that path, you are unstoppable. Let's talk about that. We're talking about purpose today. And I'm going to tell you a personal story. And it's a lifelong story. And since it's just us, I think it's okay. You know, as you know, I'm half Hickory Apache. My mother gave me up for adoption when I was born. And I was born before the Indian Child Welfare Act, which meant that I was adopted outside of the reservation, outside of the tribe. Today that wouldn't happen, but it did almost 50 years ago. So I was adopted by an African-American family. And back 50 years ago, people weren't talking about biracial issues in the way they talk about them now. It was, you're black, and that's it. The one-drop rule, that's the end of it. So the whole idea that I was half Native American was very foreign. Even after I, became enrolled with my tribe later in life, some of my friends and family would say, oh, you're Indian now, right? Because there just wasn't an understanding of what that meant to be biracial. But I did have an aunt that was part Native, and she lived in Florida, and she sent me a book called The People Called Apache. Now, I didn't know what kind of Apache I was. I just knew that I was half Apache. And I loved that book. I was a nerd going way back. I could fluently read by the time I was 4 years old. And when I think I got this book around, it was published in 1974. I think I got it in 1975. So I was about maybe 8 years old. Carried the book around. I was like the kid that read under the covers with a flashlight. Slept with my books. I'm still that way about my books. I just love being surrounded by the printed word, right? And, the Kindle and the Nook doesn't do it for me. It has to be physical books, right? So I loved that book. And for me, it was something about that book just resonated. It was a self-discovery of who I was. And I had no other context. Well, one day I'm looking for my book. And I asked my mother, where's my book? And she says, oh, I threw it out. And I said, well, why? Because you have an attitude every time you read the book. And I'm sick of your attitude, so I threw the book out. I was devastated, right? And it was kind of like a story of my life that I had lost this piece of myself. But, it didn't end there. I did become enrolled with my tribe. And I have a beautiful family, a beautiful Native American family. But one of the things that I remember reading about in that book was about puberty ceremonies that the girls would go through. It was a huge ceremony. And I always dreamed that even if I couldn't have that, I would have that for my daughter. And when it was time for her to have her puberty ceremony, we had a puberty ceremony that was more outrageous than any that had happened in years. The brave on the side of it, he was training to be a medicine man. And so he had all the spirituality and all the family and all the backing on the brave side. On our side, family came out of the woodwork and they had a buffalo hunt for her. And we had a medicine woman perform the ceremony over 4 days. And I can't go into the depth of it, but I can say that it was one of the most profound experiences of my life and of my daughter's life. And my daughter carries that sacred medicine with her today. And even the family that I didn't get to grow up with, they came out of the woodwork. We give an offering to the medicine woman. They snuck around the teepee afterward and doubled the offering because there was so much spirituality present in that ceremony. So you look at who I am now. My focus in law is Indian law. I have a beautiful family. of a beautiful Native family. I'm a judge of a Native tribe. I've had the opportunity to develop laws that significantly benefit Native communities, and I've been really honored to be used by Spirit in the way that I have been. Why am I telling you that story? Well, it's interesting because a couple of weeks ago, I think about 2 weeks ago, one of my aunts was giving a talk on our grandfather. And my grandfather was Garfield Velarde, one of my great-grandfather. He was one of the most recognized chiefs and one of the most photographed figures of our tribe. And you won't believe what she had with her.
Oh, she.
Yes, she did. My book. Guess who's on the cover? My grandfather. Oh. So Annette, of course, found this book and got it for me. And so when you think about it, like, not only was that part of me reaching out, like my grandfather, my family is actually in this book, that my only connection could not be severed. It seemed like the book was gone. You know, I'm 9 years old. It seems like my connection with myself is forever severed and I have no way of recovering it. But my ancestors were reaching out to me. And my path led the way that my path was supposed to go. And so what came up for me with this is this deep reassurance, this reaffirmation that we are all on a specific path, and that path lies deep within us. And no weapon formed against you shall prosper when you are on that path. Each of us comes into this lifetime with something of beauty, of something unique. We say that all the time. There's something how God is expressing as you in a deeply profound and unique way. The way that only you can express in this planet. And that we are brought here in this time, in this place, in this moment, with this spiritual development, with this message, to be able to create something that's profound, that's beautiful, that's forever, that's uniquely us. And once we tap into that space within us, once we tap into that joy within us, once we tap into that place that gives us our bliss, no matter what people do, no matter how people in their ignorance or their lack of understanding, or because they're blind or because they have their issues, they don't have the power to separate you from the true purpose of why you're here in this planet right now. And we don't just have one purpose. I have purpose as a mother. I have purpose as a tribal member. I have a purpose as a partner. I have a purpose as a career person. I have a purpose as a judge. I have a person as someone who's in a relationship. I have a purpose as your friend. And all of those are intricately braided and weave and woven together as we go toward this light that is the divine. And each of us are on this pathway. So many people live a life where it's all about the daily grind. You know, you look at people and they're living their bliss, and they look like people who are like professional athletes or, you know, living as artists, and, you know, people who are able to express the beauty in life, and you go, oh, I wish I could be like those people. They found their purpose. But I go to this 9-to-5 job, and I go through this life, and it feels like a grind, right? How do we know that we are living our purpose when sometimes our life looks like a grind? Sometimes life looks like you get on the freeway and you deal with the traffic. Every morning, I'm trying to get on that I-25, right? And it's a line. Every morning I'm in traffic. How do I know that I'm living this purpose, this beauty for which I was created? How do I know I'm living that when I'm living in something that looks like the routine of life? And life has routines. You know, I used to have a grandmother that said you can never get ahead of your laundry. You can never get ahead of your dishes, right? There's just some things that just keep coming up, and you have to deal with them. It's part of life. How do we know that we're living our purpose when sometimes it looks like what I really want to do is off there somewhere? How do we do that? You know, what came up for me around this conversation was this idea that even when I'm in the daily grind, that it took a journey for me to even get to that point. For me to have that particular job, there was a process of education. I am a woman of color that's highly educated. I'm a woman of color that can read. I'm a woman of color in a place where I can vote. That every woman everywhere don't have this. Women of color everywhere don't have this. People may not have what I have. I have to go to the grocery store. What does it take to get all of those groceries in that one store? The people who had to grow it, the people who packaged it, the people who planted it, the people who put it on the shelves, the people who were ringing it up. There is a whole lot of gratitude that goes behind each step of everything that we think is grind. And what matters is to look behind it. I have to drive in traffic, you know, but I have a car, and I can afford the gas, and I have the freedom to drive, and I have the eyesight to do it. And so what matters is that as we're in each of the daily things we're doing, that we can keep tracing it back, tracing it back, tracing it back, until we get to a space of, hey, I'm in a space of gratitude. I'm in a space of joy. You know, yeah, I may be sitting in traffic, but life is gorgeous, right? I get to be somebody who gets to do this. The thing is that when we start looking at the places in us that are our purpose, the place to explore is to go back in our own selves and look at what is it that excites me? What is it that inspires me? What is it that I want to do that I'm not doing? And do it. It may not, you know, you may not be able to quit your day job, you know, today and be Zenobia and wow everyone with your amazing musical skills or your literary skills, but you always keep writing. Right, because the thing is that once we have that space in us, we know that we have the power to create anything. The inspiration for how we live our lives is inside of us. It's not that there's some outside entity that's saying, this is what you're supposed to do, and you need to do it, and there's a specific way of going about it. And if you miss that mark at some point, well, then you just missed the boat. You don't get that particular gift, or you don't get to be that. You don't get to be the singer, or the artist, or the counselor, or the therapist, or have that relationship. Life never passes us by. You know, I was looking at the moon earlier this evening, and I said, you know, there are infinite ways, infinite number of ways to get to that moon. There are infinite number of people who have thought about how to get to that moon. There is no limitation on how we get there. Only our limitation in our concept of that we would even approach it. Similarly, when we have these things in our lives that inspire us, only we can limit that. But the thing is that because there's no, now we can have a conversation about there's multiplicity of God being inside of all of us, and at the same time, there's oneness, right? So we know that God is everything and all of it at once, and we are everything and all of it at once. And so how I relate to God inside of me is maybe different than how you relate to God inside of you, but it's all still real. It's all valid. And we may call God by many names. We may approach it in different ways, but it's all going to the same moon. We're pointing at the same sun. We're pointing at the same moon. We're all headed in the same way. When we realize that, you think about, Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science, said that the divine creator, that God creates in the same way that we create. The way that we create is we are spirit, we are divine, and we have a mind, and we have emotions, and we have all of these tools that we use to create our reality. How do we know what reality to create? I mean, there's the Ein-Sof of God that's innumerable and infinite. How do we know what to create? You know what to create for yourself because it's in you to do it. So if you are inspired to write poetry, then that is your purpose. If you are inspired to give love to someone, that is your purpose. Spirit put that in you. So that is your purpose. So you're not living someone's outside purpose. What you need to know, what you need to be, who you need to express as, is uniquely you. And it can never be removed from you. And how I express love, how I express my gift to the world, is going to be different than the way you do it. So because of that, only you are uniquely situated to express God in this special way. And we are called by the Creator to be divine service. When we are not being that joy, when we are not being that bliss, when we say, oh, one day I can do this bliss. If we say one day I can express that. When we say, well, maybe I just don't get this time. We are actually missing the mark. In Science of Mind, we call it missing the mark. Everyone else calls it a sin. We are missing the mark of who you were created to be. When you and I put off that divine expression in us, because you were brought here with this special gift. You know, a lot of times we've talked about what's going on in the world. We talk about social activism. We talk about spiritual activism. We're talking about engaged spirituality. How do I look at the world and the world is saying somebody has to do something? Somebody does. And because it occurred to you to do it, it's on you to do it. It's on you to be the sacred service, to be that divine plan on the planet. But what if I mess up? What if I don't do it right? What if I'm not completely clear? What if I get angry? What if I go and, tip over a police car or I cuss somebody out in my expression of divine service? What if I go wrong? See, the thing is, if we are waiting to be perfect before we express God, we will never have that experience of ourselves. Because the path to perfection is the practice of the spirituality. The path to perfection is in the practice. As lawyers, they say, oh, you're practicing law, you're not really doing it. She's still practicing, right? You have to be the expression, and we will miss the mark. Whatever you sow, you reap. If you sow something, if you miscreate something, if you do create something and you plant bad seed, what happens is that bad seed comes up, right? But that's not the end of the story. Because the idea that there's some punishing God with lightning and firebolts and hell waiting for you if you did it wrong is just not true. We are here practicing to learn a lesson. We are here practicing to learn by oh, I did that. That didn't feel good. That didn't work out. That's not what I want to plant. And what do? You plant something on a higher vibration of light. I learned from that. I'm sorry. How do I make it right in the world? Oh, that didn't feel good. I see. I shouldn't have done that to you. I didn't intend to harm you. But how can I make it right? Do service. Pay your tithes. Make it right. Make it right to that person. Create something in a higher vibration of light than what you miscreated in the temporary darkness. Because we all know that what you plant in the essence and in the vibration of the divine power has infinite more power than what you miscreated out of error and ego. Plant the light. Forgive yourself. And keep moving. Keep in purpose. Keep the seva, the sacred service. And keep expressing that part of you that is divine, that is beautiful, that is why you're here. We are expressing our purpose in God. And when we are doing that, when we are that light, you cannot be stopped. The world may give you challenges. People may come up and try to stop you. People may be threatened by your light. People may try to thwart you. Circumstances may seem to limit you. But all of that is an illusion. That is not the truth. Because as you walk in the power and the divine light of who you are infinitely blessed. You are infinitely powerful. You are strength. You are God in action. And what God has put together, let no man pull asunder. And let this mind be in you, which is also in Christ Jesus, which is also in Christ consciousness. Let that mind be in you, that you are as divine as you are the divine as the Son of God. And you cannot be thwarted. So I want us to take a time, and let's go into our meditation, and let's ground that in.